If you're here for the first time, if this is your first time at our Super Tuesday business meeting, this is a meeting that we have every other Tuesday night. Now, what is the purpose of it? Why do we have these meetings on Tuesday night? Well, the real purpose of it is to continue to provide the knowledge and then to go over some of the real world things that happen in the freight broker business. So that we are more familiar with what is going on, so that when we start on our journeys, then everything is not foreign to us. When things start happening, that's something that you can look back and say, oh, we've talked about that. I have a little bit of familiarity with that topic, and it makes you a little bit more comfortable. So we want to use these meetings for that. So we encourage you to bring different ideas, different things that you want to share with the group that you see beneficial, that you're experiencing in your business that could possibly help others with their business. So that's what this is all about. That's why we do it every other Tuesday night, because I believe that freight brokering is not about just a one and done training, but it's about continued training so that we can become more and more proficient. The better we are at what we do, the more value we bring to the table. And then our customers have a reason for wanting to keep us around. And we should always be thinking in those terms is, why is it that my customer keeps me around? Why do they want me on their team? What is so good about the service that I provide? Always ask yourself that question, because when you're asking yourself that question, it makes you want to continue to improve on that service. It makes you continue to look at it to make sure that you're providing, as much as you possibly can to your shipper, because shippers have options. We are not their only option. So we want to make sure that they know and they can see the value in the service that we provide. Now, food logistics. Highly recommend this publication if you are moving refrigerated freight, food products. Highly recommend this publication. Great publication, keeps you on top of different recalls and regulations. And as freight brokers, we want to be ahead of the information game. We want to know what's going on out there so that we can inform our shippers. Remember, we are not just moving loads from point A to point B. We are providing a service to the shipper. And a part of that service is being up on what's going on around the freight that you're moving. That's why I think it is good to develop a niche, to go into a particular space and learn about that type of freight. Because the more you learn about the freight, then of course, the more you can offer to the shipper as far as value when it comes down to moving that freight from point A to point B. So we want to study our craft, be good at what it is that we're doing. That publication is called Food Logistics. There's different others I like. Transport Topics is one other. That's a publication that we get all the time as well. Transport Topics, great publication, keeps you up on top of things, what's going on in freight world. And we definitely want to be on top of that, because the better we are at what we do, the more value we bring to the shipper, the more they can understand why they use our services. So good to see you this evening. Thanks so much for being here. I'm always thrilled to have you with us. We have a very good presentation, I think, lined up for you tonight. It's the load movement process. And why are we talking about the load movement process tonight? Why would that be of interest to you? Well, the load movement process, in my opinion, is the most important part about being, or becoming, I should say, a freight broker. Everything is built off of this foundation. In order for you to be successful, you must be able to move loads. That's what it's all about. So we're going to discuss this process. We're going to go over the steps that you are going to take to move loads. If you're already moving loads, you may want to take a look at this and make sure that you're covering these areas and fine-tuning your processes. It's all about continuing to improve your processes, because the more you streamline your processes, the more you can provide in value to your shipper. And remember, it's all about value. You'll hear me say that word throughout this presentation, value, the value that you provide. It's so critically important that we think in terms of the value that we bring to our shippers. Okay? A lot of things going on in the world. Pandemic seems to be subsiding a bit. Some things are happening as far as mask restrictions are now being lifted. So things are returning or seeming to return to a bit to some sense of normalcy. So there's a lot going on. It's a lot of decisions that we have to make. Are you going to wear a mask? Are you going to continue to wear a mask, or are you not going to wear a mask? Are you going to get the vaccine, or are you not going to get the vaccine? It's decisions. I'm not asking you those questions. That's up to you. Decisions, decisions, decisions. And it's all about making the decision that you think is best for you. You know, that's what I think it boils down to. I don't think this is a partisan thing. I wouldn't consider anything about it being partisan. You know, I am the type of person that I look at a situation and I decide whether or not I'm going to do something based on what I feel is best for me. Okay, that's how I see it. So decisions, there are consequences that comes with decisions. There are things that we have to deal with because of the decisions that we make. So everybody have their own decision to make. And I wish you the very best, wish you the wisdom and the courage that you need to make the right decisions for you. Okay, another thing that's going on that people are talking a whole lot about, you know, what I like to talk about is what's going on in the crypto world. I like that topic, the crypto topic. I see a lot of promise within the crypto world. See a lot of up and comings, a lot of opportunity. But of course, also in new industries, you're going to have periods of time where those markets are going to take a dive. Okay, so I show you when things are going well for me in the crypto. And I also want to show you that when things are not going so well, because that's a part of it. And really, this is a crapshoot when it really boils down to it. It might work and it might not, which is why you don't have a whole lot of exposure. You know, you go in here with what you're willing to lose. Okay, that's how I look at it. That's just my way of seeing it. Other people may see it differently, but you know, when you have Bitcoin suffers biggest pullback this year, drops to 3.5-month low near 42,000. When I checked today, it was about 42,000 per coin. Bitcoin was. So that's a significant drop from 55,000 all the way back to 42,000. Now, Ethereum, which is another crypto that I hold, I have been very bullish on Ethereum. And here you can see price slides roughly 20% in 24 hours. But signs of recovery are showing. Now, in the stock markets, you don't have this type of volatility where you see 20% swings in a day. You know, so that's what happens when you're in a new up and coming industry like the crypto world. Okay, so you have Ethereum slide 20% in one day, but it's been blasting off. That comes with the territory. That's just how it works. But what's behind these big drops? Bitcoin tumbles after Musk implies Tesla may sell cryptocurrency. In these type of investments, I have a very, very small percentage of my money tied up into something like this because anything can happen with it. What I have in crypto is about $14,000 of my own money, and I've made about $15,000 off of it since I've been in it. These are the holdings that I have. Most of my holdings will be in a holding called XRP, which is a company called Ripple. That's the biggest part of my portfolio, and then Ethereum. To me, it's like going to the casino. And of course, you don't go there with money that you're not willing to give away, because that's usually what happens. You end up giving it away. Okay. All right. So now let's get down to the Let's get down to the business at hand. What we're talking about tonight is the load movement process. And I saw this question on Google one day during the weekend last week. And it says, is there a demand for freight brokers? And it says, according to the industry sources, the penetration of U.S. freight brokerage in the total freight market is significantly increasing. U.S. trucking industry is facing driver shortage, and it has an adverse effect on the businesses like brokerages, which rely on carriers. Now, I want you to tell me, somebody tell me what you think of that statement. How does it correlate with you and your business? Do you agree with that statement? Bridget says she agrees. Craig says he agrees. Anybody disagree with this statement? Anybody disagree with this statement? If you disagree with this statement, type in the number 10 and let us know why you disagree. John says he agrees. Okay. Type in the number 10 if you disagree. And why do you disagree with this statement? Okay. So we don't have any 10s. We got a lot of 8s going down. And if I look at that statement, I can see why people would have some agreement with this statement. But let's start to read this statement again. According to industry sources, the penetration of U.S. freight brokerage in the total freight market is significantly increasing. U.S. trucking industry is facing driver shortage, and that has an adverse effect on the businesses like brokerages, which rely on carriers. Well, Derek says he agrees with that statement. All right, so now I'm going to take a different position. I don't agree with this statement. And the reason why I don't agree with it, or I see it differently, is what I should say, is that freight brokerages don't suffer because there's a trucking shortage. Freight brokers flourish because there's a trucking shortage. See, if there's no trucking shortage, then the value of my services are less and less. So we as a freight brokerage, we are looking for the problem of driver shortage, trucking shortages, because even during trucking shortages, I can go into spaces and get trucks. If everybody could get trucks, then there would be no need for your services as a freight broker. When there's a trucking shortage, that's when we are at our best, or should be at our best, because that's what it's all about, going into that space and providing trucks when no one else can. Load movement. Now, your job as a freight broker is to build relationships. We know that. We talk about that all the time. We talk about why that is such an important piece, why that's critical to what it is that we're doing. We have to be able to do that. We have to build relationships in order to get opportunities to move shippers' freight. That's what drives profits. Freight drives profit. Okay. So it just makes common sense to me that if you are learning about freight brokering, what you want to focus your attention on is moving loads from point A to point B. How do you do that? What is involved in that? How does that process go? Because that is what I really need to be paying attention to. So there's a lot of stuff to learn. You can go out and talk about, oh, what does truck order not used mean? What's detention pay mean? How do I handle claims? But none of that means much of anything if you're not moving freight. So that's why we focus as a training program on acquiring the first customer and moving the first load. Why? Because that's the foundation that you have to build your business on. And to go out and study a whole lot of other things, a lot of times to me, is just busy work. People saying that they're doing something. So until we can get this part down, that other stuff means very little. Doesn't mean a whole lot that you have a business set up if you're not moving freight. It just means that you got a business set up and you're paying for a lot of different things. So our responsibility is to get loads, to move loads. Make no mistake about that. Step one in this process is earning opportunities. Okay. You have your way of doing that. You have to develop your way of how you earn opportunities. You've seen me talk about this in different videos of how we do that. My way is going to be different from your way. You have to, of course, get your way of going to customers, your way of acquiring their business. Number two, once you have talked to shippers, you've set up with those shippers, Meaning when we say set up with those shippers, we're saying that you have sent in your packet to the shipper. You've sent over a setup packet, which usually includes paperwork such as your surety bond, your contingent cargo insurance to show that you have cargo insurance, your W-9, and maybe a welcome profile or welcome packet to show your company profile. Okay. So those are the things that you're going to send over to the shipper in order to get set up. You are going to be informing the shipper that you are going to run credit. Why are you asking the shipper, or why are you informing the shipper that you'll be running credit? Someone give us an answer to that question. Marcus says to make sure that they're in good standing to pay for payment purposes if you don't have the money to pay the driver. Okay. All right. All right. So here's the deal. The reason why we're letting them know that we are going to be running credit is because we are extending, say that again, we are as a company extending short-term credit to the shipper. So if you're extending short-term credit to someone, you would have to check their credit to ensure that they are credit worthy. Now, if you are financing the bill yourself, you don't have to check credit. You can say, hey, I'm okay. And I'm, for whatever reason, you might say, hey, I don't need to check credit. But if you are working with a factoring company, you would want to let them know that your factoring company will be running credit. They're going to be checking their credit to make sure that they are credit worthy. Then your factoring company will come back and tell you, okay, Brandon, this customer is approved. And they'll give you a limit to the amount of invoices that they can have outstanding in a 30-day period. After you have said, okay, we're going to request credit, the very next question that I want to ask is, how do I get access to your load list? As you have seen me in videos show you, there are different ways that you can access a customer's freight. Some customers will send you out a load list, and that load list will be sent out periodically, maybe twice a week, maybe just once a week. And then if they have different emergencies come up, they'll send out emails about the different lanes that they may be covering or need covering. So that's one way of getting it. Shippers sending out load list information. So of course you got to wait until that information comes before you can act on it. Another way is having access to the shipper's TMS. You've seen me do that with some of our customers. We have access to their TMS, and that is a great way to start bidding on freight as well. So once we find out how that shipper gives us access to the freight, we can start going in and bidding on freight that's available. That's the first part. We have to get freight in order for you and I to take a look at, to find out what we can get it moved for, how much profit we can make on it, so that we can take it to the marketplace and execute. But once we've gotten permission to quote lanes, now we have the job of going in and doing the homework in the lane. This is where people make mistakes at. They've gotten the opportunity now to move the load, but here comes the mistake. Because they go out and they give what I refer to as random pricing in these lanes, okay? You get a lane from a shipper and you go into the load board and you go in and say, okay, this is what it shows on the load board, so I'm gonna send that price back to the shipper and tell them we can do it at that price. Or even worse, you go in and you say, hey, I'm just gonna use this $2 a mile type deal, or $2.50 a mile, or even $3, You use that randomly, and then what you find yourself in a situation is you go and you start to try and sell that load and you're way too low, okay? So that is the part that we have to cut out right away. When you get lanes from shippers, you can't go in with a random rate. You got to go into the lane to find out what you, as a freight brokerage, can get that lane moved for. And what I can get it moved for and what you get it moved for might be two different prices. I might be $100 more than you. You might be $200 less than I am, or $200 more than I am. The bottom line is what your brokerage can get it moved for. of course, and still make a profit. And then you take that cost back to the shipper. Okay, so but make sure you are doing your homework in the lane prior to going back to your shipper with a rate. Okay, so now after you have gone into the lane and you're comfortable, you've talked to carriers in the lane, you are comfortable with going back to the shipper with a price. You feel like that you can go back to the shipper with this price and make at least 15% profit margin on this load. Now, what you want to do is present in email, just in email. We're not going back with a signature rate quote just yet. We're going back via email with a rate saying, hey, here's what we can get this load moved for. And the question that we're going to ask is, will this work? If you don't hear anything about back from the shipper, do a follow-up email. But that first email is not the rate quote that you send them for signature. It's just a email that you're sending to get them to say yes or no. So when they say yes, that price works. Now I'm going to shift over to my TMS system. That's why we think that it's important that you have a TMS system, a transportation management system, because now I'm going to go in and put in the information into the system. And then it's going to spit out a rate quote for the shipper. Okay. Now, if you notice here, this is the paperwork. I got all of the paperwork in hand here, and I'm going to go through this paperwork and show you at the end all the paperwork that you're going to need to make this deal work. Because that's what we do is, as freight brokers, we house the paperwork. So the TMS is going to give you your rate quotes. It's going to give you your rate confirmations, your BOLs when you need them. So that's why I think it is a very, very good tool to have starting out with a TMS. Okay. So we're going to send a rate quote over for the shipper signature. And the reason why we're sending a rate quote now is because the shipper has already said, okay, Brandon, that rate will work. So now I am going to send out a contract to cover the first side. Okay, I'm going to send out the first side to cover the first side of the contract. I need a shipper to sign and say, hey, Brandon, I'm willing to pay you X amount of dollars to move this load from point A to point B. These are all the details that's in that lane. Okay, so then I send out that for signature. Now, when I send that out for signature, of course, now I'm waiting for the shipper to sign that document and send it back to me with what we refer to as a tender. Okay. Now, what a tender is, it'll say where the load is picking up, where it's dropping off. It's going to have the total miles. It's going to have the total rate that you're being paid. It's going to say what the line haul rate is, what the fuel surcharge is, and what the extra drops are for. On this particular load, we had extra drops. So it gave the extra drops breakdown cost, and then it gave a total charge. And that is what they are agreeing to pay. So this shipper requires that we have a tender with every load. So after I send out the rate quote for signature, then the next step is for me to wait to receive the rate quote back, and they are going to send me this tender. And when I get this tender, now I have the authority to move this load. I have the signature authority from the shipper, and I have this tender, because at the bottom of this tender, it says tender must accompany billing in order for me to get paid on this load. So I must have the tender with this load. So once I send the rate quote over for signature, they're going to send it back with the signed and the tender. So I'll have the tender in my hand and the rate quote. So those are the two first pieces of paperwork to start the process of moving a load. You're going to get a rate quote signed by your signature, by your shipper, and you're going to get a tender. So I take those two documents and start off with those in a paper clip to start the process of moving that load. Okay. Now, I have some other pieces that I have to close out or to go through of this in this process to make sure that we close this out on both sides. So now what I'm going to do is, says here we're going to schedule a pickup and delivery. But first, we got to go to the marketplace or sell this freight to the truck. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do before we go and schedule a pickup is we're going to go to the marketplace to sell this particular lane. Now, again, when we've done our homework in the lane and we've sharpened the pen on the cost that we have in this lane, when we take it to the marketplace, we're not taking wondering what it costs to move it. We're taking it with the confidence that we can get it moved at whatever number that's going to allow for us to make the profit that we've said we wanted to make on this load. In this case, I said the number was 15% when we first started. So we've already carved that out in the pay. We know what we're going to be going to the carrier at in order to make that 15%. So it's two ways that you can look at this. You can say, hey, I'm going to go to the load board and I'm going to post this load with a price, or I'm going to post a load without a price. It's up to you. Now, when I don't have a whole lot of time, I post loads with pricing because I'm confident that I have a strong price. So I don't want to hide anything. I want to make it, right out in the open. This is what we have on this load, so that, when people are calling, they're serious about moving the load. But if I have a lot of time, I may not post it with the price, because then I may be looking to make additional profit. Okay. So before we schedule a pickup, we're going to, of course, go to the marketplace to sell this load to our carriers. Okay. And we got to have an attractive load in order to have an easier time of selling the load. The more unattractive load that you have, the harder it's going to be for you to sell the load. What makes a load unattractive? Well, let's say you got a whole lot of loads with a lot of drops. If you don't have a lot of money in that load and you have a lot of work that's involved with it, people are automatically shun that load. And it's not just about rates. It's about also going into certain places that they know they're going to have extended detention hours. When they have problem areas like that, truckers start talking about those areas fast. Can put you at a disadvantage. So when we go to the marketplace, we're going with the confidence of a solid rate, and we're hoping that that's a good lane. Haven't had any problems with detention in those lanes. Okay. Sometimes you're going to have that. There's no way around that. But then you have what kicks in is you're paying the carrier's detention. Okay. So now we've gone to the marketplace and we're talking to carriers about this lane, and we have gotten a carrier that is willing to do the load. You've agreed to a price. All right. Now what you have to do with that carrier is get set up with the carrier. Okay. You're going to get set up with the carrier if you are not already set up with that carrier. Okay. Because you're not just going to go to a load board, you're going to go to your own network as well as you start to build it. And if you're going to your own network and you're moving lanes, then you don't need to set up again because you've already set up with the carrier. Okay. But if you have not worked with a carrier before, every single new carrier that you work with, you're going to set up with that carrier. Okay. So now what do we mean when we say setting up with a carrier? Okay. Very simple. And you'll see this in the training program, is that there are certain documents that you're going to send out to that carrier. One is your contract between you and the carrier. It's going to detail the relationship, the do's and the don'ts of you and the carrier. It's going to talk about back solicitation and all of those kind of things within that contract to make sure the carrier knows what to do, what not to do. All right. And you also have some responsibility. It's going to lay out in there as well. So the contract is what you're going to be sending over for the carrier's signature. You're also going to send them over maybe a welcome packet. You're going to send your bond to make sure that he knows that you have a surety bond, because in the event that you don't pay him, he needs to be able to file a claim against your bond. Okay. You're going to send over also your contingent cargo insurance, just to show that you have contingent cargo insurance. Okay. So you may add some things to your packet. That's definitely up to you, but that's a part of what you're going to be sending out to the carrier for setup. that carrier is going to in turn send you back documents as well. He's going to send you back his insurance information, his licensing information to make sure, his motor carrier authority, showing you that he's good to go in that area. Now you have a carrier that you can use. You're set up with a carrier, but you're also going to do one other step in checking out that carrier's information. When you set that carrier up, you're going to go and check that carrier out to make sure that he is who he says he is. Now, how do you do that? How do you check your carrier out as far as his licensing is concerned, his SMS results? How do you check him out? Some people have software like Carrier 411, onboarding softwares that check carriers out for them. Others, like me, use something that they have for free called a safer system. So if you just go to google.com and put in check MC number, when you put in check MC number, the safer system is going to pop up, and you can go to that system and check any of your drivers out, check their information out without having to pay for that information. You can click on SMS results, you can click on licensing and insurance. Is going to show you the information on your drivers. So I like that option better than paying for an onboarding system. You know, some people like, you know, to have it in a system, you know, and I get that. But remember, this is not a money spending game. Now, let me look at some of these questions here. Yes, Lisa, it will be available to watch later. We'll send it out. Understand. How often do truckers attempt to negotiate the rate offer? Craig asked. That's a good question. How often do truckers attempt to negotiate the rate that you're offering? Often, all the time. Yeah, you know, and I shouldn't say all the time, because sometimes you're going to have a rate out there, and a trucker is going to know that it's a solid rate, and they're going to call and they're just going to say, hey, we have a load available. Is that load still available? We'll take it. Sometimes it's going to be that way, but there are going to be other times. And what I would say most times, especially when you're talking to owner operators, they're always going to be always going to want to negotiate, want to get, you know, see if they can get a little bit more. But at the same time, that's why, you know, you got to have some confidence in the rate that you have. You know, you got to know that you have a solid rate. You got to be willing to walk away sometime. And oftentimes they'll call back when you have a good rate. What time frame do you want to make sure to get a bid in on the load? Okay, good question too. Now, when a shipper gives me a load, when a shipper sends out information on a load to say they want a quote on that load, first thing that I come back in an email and let them know is that we have received the information and we're working on a quote, and we'll be back with you as soon as we get it. Now, the reason why I do that, because I also ask the question sometimes, is this something that you're requiring a rate on right away, or is this something that we're, you know, giving you a rate on for future? Because if it's a future rate, I want to take some more time on it, you know, but if it's something that's moving right away, I want to go ahead and get on top of it right then. So I'm going to ask the question to find out first, you know, what type of rate are you asking for? You want a spot rate? You want to give this to you right back? Or is this something that is going to be moving next week, 2 weeks from now? What's the deal on it? Pricing, what it's going to cost me to move the lane, and I send it right back to the shipper. Once you quote a line haul rate, will the shipper automatically add the fuel surcharge, or do you have to bring that up to the shipper? Derek asked. Okay. Now, when you quote a shipper a lane, that's a great question. When you quote a shipper a lane, you want to make sure that you're asking, what type of quote are you asking me for? Are you asking me for an all-in rate? Or are you asking me for a line haul rate? A lot of times shippers just want the line haul rate. If they're asking for a line haul rate, they are going to go back and add in the surcharge. Okay. Like, for example, on this load, they're showing a line haul rate, and then they show the fuel surcharge. Okay. So they are adding that in automatically because we are providing only line haul rates, and then they go in and add the fuel surcharge to it. Okay. So good question on that. So once we set up the carrier, we check them out, check the MC number out, and we are comfortable with that carrier. That carrier is good to go. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to send them over a rate confirmation. All we're going to do is go back into the TMS, click on rate confirmation, and it's going to print the rate confirmation out. Okay. Now, here's the deal. Your rate confirmation will have on it, it's just going to have some special instructions. For example, it says here, driver counts and verifies good condition of product. Please take pics of damaged boxes, cases, and report to broker as soon as possible. Then it has my number in there, and then it has the temperature that we're running this freight at, temperature -10. Thank you for your cooperation. Safe travels. That is what we have in the driver's instructions, okay, and what is called special instructions. You always want to put information within the special instructions that apply to that load. That is going to go on your rate confirmation. What is this rate confirmation? This rate confirmation is your second contract, okay? We got a contract on the front end with a shipper. The shipper is saying, hey, Brandon, I'm willing to pay you X amount of dollars to move this load for me. Now I have a rate confirmation. I have the second contract document that says, hey, Brandon, I'm willing to move that lane at X amount of dollars. And in order for me to make money, if I got $1,500 in that load, let's say I'm going to the carrier at $1,200, I'm going to the shipper at $1,500. I'm making $300 on that load. So that rate confirmation will have the amount, it will say here, like it does, the rate in the lane is going to have the carrier information, it's going to have the pickup and the drop, and then it's going to have the pickup information as far as what time the appointments are, what days the appointments are on for pickup, what days the appointments are on for delivery, okay? And it has a signature for the driver. Now, I'm going to send this over to the driver, and he is going to sign it and send it back to me. Once I have this paperwork, the rate confirmation, the tender from the shipper, and the rate quote from the shipper, now I have the documents that I need to go ahead and start moving this load. I have all of the signature requirements that I need at this point. Now, the rest of the paperwork that I am going to need in order to get paid on this load, you see, because what I call freight brokers, really, when it really boils down to it, is we are money movers. We move money. Where is the money? This is the money right here. This is the money. The paperwork is the money, okay? So we are movers of money. That's really what it really boils down to. You don't ever see any freight. You know that you have got breaded mushrooms on here, but I never see that. I never have anything to do with that, you know, getting pallets on trucks or anything like that. I am moving the money. I am responsible for the paperwork that gets the driver paid and gets me paid. So we are movers of money in a sense. So once you get that signed rate confirmation from your carrier, you got the second contract that you need. It's the day that it's time for that load to move. Well, if this is a new carrier, I am going to contact that carrier the day before that load moves, okay? If this is a new carrier, and even when it's carriers that I work with, I just like to check the block. I like to talk to them the day prior to make sure that everything is still good to go, to make sure that we don't have any hiccups. You didn't forget about the load. I'm going to call you the day prior to make sure that we're on the same sheet of music, because sometimes you might have to make an adjustment. So you want to do, make sure that you have some time to adjust just in case. Okay, so give them a call 24 hours prior. And then you might want to call the morning of. Hey, just want to make sure that we're still good to go. That pickup is at 7 a.m. How far are you out? So we're just doing check calls to make sure that our load is good, because the last thing that we want is that load to be missed that morning, and now we got to scramble to try and get it covered. Okay, so we're going to make a check call to make sure we're squared away on the load pickup. Now, here's the deal. I'm not just going to call the carrier. I want to call the pickup facility as well, because sometimes you have problems with the pickup facility where the product may not be ready. So before I send a truck over there, before I dispatch a truck, I want to make sure, hey, everything is good to go. So we have some homework that we have to do. We have some checks that we want to make with our pickup facility where we're picking up. We want to make sure that we're giving those guys a call to make sure everything is still good for that pickup that morning. All right. Then we, of course, let the carrier know that it's good, and he goes ahead and picks that load up. Now, we got to collect the paperwork and process the carrier payment. And then, of course, we're going to invoice the shipper for us to get paid. Now, I want to show you, or I'm going to go through the paperwork, the documents that you're going to need here to get paid. All right. Now, I'm going to also include in here if you're working with a factoring company. This is for factoring companies. You need an invoice. Okay. Need an invoice that you are invoicing your shipper. The paperwork for the invoice will be your invoice to the shipper saying, I'm invoicing you $1,500 for this particular load. I have a lumper fee in there, so that's going to be a little bit more. You're going to have your invoice where you are invoicing your shipper. That's the first document, all right? Then you're going to have the document that is required, your tender. Then you're going to have the rate quote. This is going to be signed by your shipper. It's going to have the information, pick up the delivery, and how much they're paying for this load. Then you're going to have the BOL. So when the carrier finishes that load, he's going to send me some documents, okay? And what we have some problems with sometimes is carriers going ahead and sending the documents after the load is complete. Sometimes carriers will hold on to paperwork for weeks at a time. So we have to make sure that we're talking to carriers to get them to send that paperwork to us as soon as possible, because that's how we get paid. So the BOL, the carrier has to send this document to you. But here's the BOL, the straight bill of lading. It's going to have the information. It's going to show me the total weight and the total number of packages that were dropped, that were received by the receiving facility. All right. So I'm going to have that BOL, signed BOL, in this document showing that the warehouse received it, because that is the shipper's paperwork proving that I did what I said that I would do. That is what you're going to need. That's why the BOL is so important. The bill of lading, it shows what has been picked up and what has been received, and it gives you a signature of who is the receiving person on the other end. Okay. In this case, I have a lumper receipt, because on the lumper fee for this particular load, it was $40. So the carrier sent me a lumper receipt because he took care of it. He paid it. He didn't ask us to take care of it. He paid it. So he sent us the receipt. Okay. So of course he's sending that receipt. So we'll pay this receipt when we pay him for this load. Now, the other thing that you're going to hear me talk about here is a warehouse order information. Okay. Now, all this is showing what exactly I'm picking up at each warehouse that I'm going to. You don't necessarily have to have this with all shippers, but my shipper requires that we have the warehouse order information. Okay. So we provide this back to the shipper when we invoice the shipper. So I have both warehouse order information documents on here. Next, we're going to have the carrier's rate confirmation. Okay. The carrier's rate confirmation with how much we're paying the carrier. And then the carrier is going to have an invoice that he's going to send us. The carrier just sends his invoice, shows us, hey, this is the amount of money that you owe us for this load. And that invoice is attached here. And then he's going to send us his W-9. Okay. Now, the W-9 is required. But now, in this case, this trucking company is using a factoring company. So although he's sending me a W-9, he's also sending me, he's saying, hey, Brandon, don't pay me. Don't pay my company for this particular load. You are going to take notice of a notice of assignment. You will pay according to the notice of assignment.
And in this case, I would be paying TCI Business Capital. That's the factoring company that this particular trucker uses. Okay, so those are the documents that you are going to have, and you are going to send this information to your shipper if you are direct to the shipper, or you're going to send it to your factoring company if you are factoring your loads through a factoring company. So they will actually send these documents to your shipper. You don't have the access to your shipper then. They will have the access to your shipper if you're working with a factoring company, because you'll have a notice of assignment with them saying all of your invoices are owned by your factoring company. Okay, so your shipper will pay your factoring company and not you. All right, so those are the documents. That's what you need. That's how you move a load from point A to point B. That's what it's all about. All right, what questions do you have that I might be able to answer on the topic that we just covered? Because carriers are demanding more money, do you find yourself making less than 15% margin? Yes, on some loads, but 15% margin is not where I want to be. I want to be higher than 15% margin. So yeah, sometimes you're not going to make 15% on loads, but sometimes I'm going to make 27%. Sometimes I'm going to make 30%. So I don't have a cap on the margin I make. It's based on how well I bid the lane. Okay, will determine the profit that I make in the lane. Okay, but yes, I want to make minimum of 15% in a lane. Matter of fact, I want to make a minimum of 18% in a lane. Okay, but sometimes I don't make 18%. Sometimes I settle for 10%. That's just the name of the game. That's sales. That's how it works. But there are going to be more times that I make 18% and above than I do 15% and below. Okay, hope I answered that question. Is it possible to have one packet for multiple loads with the same driver? Okay, is it possible to have one packet for multiple loads? Now, when I'm saying a setup packet, you only have to set up one time. So I don't kind of get that unless you're talking about something different. I hope, but if you're only setting up one time, so you're not going to need to keep setting up after you've already set up. How do you identify trucks in the area prior to posting loads on the load board? Okay, well, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to my carrier network. Okay, if it's a new lane, a lane that I've never worked in before, I'm still going to go to my network first because I may have carriers in that lane that can move the load. So I want to go to my network first. Now, if I can't service the lane in my own network, then I'm going to go to the load board and go into that specific lane and start calling carriers. First, I'm going to just post the load. Now, if I don't get carriers to start calling me on the lane, I'm going to start calling carriers because I need to find out what kind of capacity is in the lane. As soon as I post that lane, it's going to give me a really good idea of what's going on based on how people respond to the post. Okay, I know right away when I post a lane on a load board, if I start getting calls right away, then I'm in a good lane. I'm in a lane that has sufficient trucking capacity, and I'm not concerned about moving the load. Okay, so that is kind of how I approach it. I want to make sure if trucking capacity is good, that's a lane that I'm not going to have a problem in. Hey Tanya, yeah, you're a little bit late. We're wrapping up. I don't know what happened. It's 7 p.m. We go from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central. But we'll definitely provide this in a replay. We'll give it back to you in a replay. But always good to see you, my dear sister. Any situation where the carrier canceled prior to picking up the load and you had to find another carrier? Oh, absolutely. That happens. That happens. I'm not going to say that happens all the time, but it definitely happens that carriers will cancel on you for different reasons. Say that your carrier was picking up a load, and at that load, he's held up for some extra long detention, and now he's not going to be able to get out to get your load. That happens. Sometimes carrier have maintenance issues, and they can't get over to pick your load up. So what you have to do right away is, or sometimes carriers get better lanes. They may have said, hey, I'm going to work with you, and then they got another lane that's paying more money, and they'll cancel with you. That's just how that works sometimes. But when that happens, you don't have time to jostle with the carrier. You got to go and get your lane moved. So that whole process starts over again. And where you may have been making $300 on the lane, now you got to take it back to the marketplace and start selling it again. You could make less than that, or you could break even on the lane, So yes, that happens, and that process can be one of those situations that you can be a little frustrating. But once a carrier cancels, you may as well forget about the frustration. You got to get your load moved. So you need to start working on that as quickly as possible. Do you tell the customer that the driver canceled on you? Yes, it depends. Depends on how much time I got. Okay, but yes, I try and keep my customer in the loop, because I don't want any surprises to pop up on them, because it may come down to where that load is not going to move on the day that it was supposed to move because of a cancellation. So I want to make sure that I make them aware. I say, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. We had a problem with the load that we're supposed to pick up today. It canceled. But this is what we're looking at. We have a couple of trucks that we're looking at that can pick it up at this time and this time. So even though I'm telling them that it canceled, I'm also coming back with a solution as to what I have planned for the load. I'm not just saying it canceled and, oh, here it is, you can have it back. No, I'm coming back and giving them my plan as to how I'm going to fix the problem. Okay. And usually that is we're just going to another carrier and trying to get that load covered. It could be the same day, or it may be the next day. Okay, so we want to make sure that our shipper is aware. Yes, we'll send out a replay. We'll do a replay of this. We'll definitely send this out to you. Probably no later than Thursday. It's Tuesday today. No later than Thursday, we should get the replay out. Okay, so I hope everybody has enjoyed the information that we provided tonight. This is what it's all about. It's about moving loads. As I was telling you in the front of the class, everything revolves off of building the foundation. Everything is based on building the foundation, and your foundation is built on moving loads. So this is the first part that we have to get down. We have to start moving loads, and this is the process of moving those loads. So that's what I want to share with you tonight. Certainly hope this information has been helpful. Wish you the very best in your life and business as you continue to move your businesses forward. Somebody asked me, I received that. I will start at 8 p.m. Okay, cool. Thank you for the replay. No worries, Gloria. It's always my pleasure. Thank you so much, ladies and gents, for being with us tonight. Now, keep crushing it. Keep doing what it is that you're doing. If you're in a space and you've started to get some traction, keep doing that. If you're not quite there just yet, try some different things. Whatever you're doing right now, if that's not working, you got to try some different things to get some different results. So again, I wish you the very best. And as always, see you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.